Oh, wait, right. It helps if you.
This is Gail Morgan welcoming you to the Libertarian Counterpoint. Now, your host, James Just.
And thank you for joining me today. With me today is W. Bruce Lee from the president of the Sacramento Taxpayers Association. We're here to talk about Measure A and why it is or isn't good policy. I told you my cat was going to make an appearance.
Well, okay. Well, your cat and my canary will get along just fine.
Oh, that's going to be a great combination. We got Tom and Jerry around here. That's
Exactly.
Well, speaking of Tom and Jerry, right? These people who put together these measures might as well be Tom and Jerry, right?
Well, they're calculating, and they're not dumb people, but they're doing it for their reasons and not for the reasons of the average citizen or the voter. But it comes out with the Tom and Jerry type of proposal.
Yeah, so. Who are this coalition? Let's start. Well, first, let's back up. Let's start with what exactly is Measure A? What do they claim it's going to do, and what is it that you think it's going to actually ultimately do?
Okay, well, Measure A is a 0.5% sales tax countywide through Sacramento County, and to be used for quote transportation purposes. And this was the same measure, nearly the same measure back in 2016 that was voted down by the citizens. And then it came back in 2022 with a slight amendments. And during the process of review by the Sacramento Transportation Authority and analysis and the Sacramento Taxpayers Association, SACTAX, led an opposition campaign even at that time. And that included groups like the NAACP, the National Action Network, and others, because a sales tax is highly regressive and by its design, its nature, impacts lower income, middle income much more than others. But in this process, the Sacramento Transportation Authority decided to withdraw the measure back in 2020. And then at the end of 2021, the proposal came back again. And there was a reason for this, because there's a loophole that had been created tentatively by the courts, which would allow such a measure to only need a majority vote rather than the required 2/3 vote as required in Prop 13, the Proposition 218, etc. And so you have developers who thought, we can sneak this through this loophole. As a matter of fact, they're doing this in several parts of the state very quickly, because that loophole will not exist for potentially for much longer. And at that point, what they did back in the late 2021, they said, well, let's bring our one big project that we want to have passed by the voters, which is the connector between Highway 99 and Highway 50, the Southeast Connector, as it's called. And so and that was part of the 2020 proposal also. But then in the spring of 2022, I think people got a little greedy. They said, well, hey, let's add this and let's add that. And so they added a total of 26 projects that were not previously part of the program. Now, and then the reason let me give you a little background. SACOG, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, covering 6 counties, has worked for decades to create a reasonable, understandable development program for all 6 counties, including transportation and how to have sustainable infrastructure and meet greenhouse gas emission goals and things of this nature. And I must compliment them. It's been very well thought out, very well planned, a lot of analytics that have gone into the process. And what this proposal does, Measure A, is with no particular analysis at all. This says we're going to do these 26 new projects in addition to the SACOG plan. And that's one of the reasons you have so many people up in arms and a very unique coalition, because the coalition opposing this is not just taxpayers, but it is environmental groups, Sierra Club, Save the River, the American River. Oh, I got a whole list here, man. Let's see, what do we have? Okay, we've got Sacramento Transit Writers, League of Women Voters, Environmental Democrats of Sacramento County, Sacramento Republican Party, the County Republican Party, American River Democrats, Libertarian Party, Town and Country Democratic Club, and you even have people like, along with Citizens Climate Lobby and Climate Plan, you have Heather Fargo, the former mayor of Sacramento. And you have others such as Katie Value, I'm mispronouncing your name. My apologies to Katie. Values, help me out. Values.
Oh, don't ask me to help you out on pronouncing your name. I can butcher any name. So,
who's a current member of the Sacramento City Council, and a host of others, including, and this I think is very telling, Mike McKeever, the semi-recently retired executive officer of SACOG, who is vehemently opposed to this, who knows all the inner workings, he knows all the actors, knows all the imaginations that are going on to basically pull the wool over the voters' eyes. So that's Measure A. It's a 0.5% for 40 years sales tax. So this sales tax will continue for a long time, even when the good Lord calls me home. And there are many obvious reasons, and then some not so obvious mega reasons why this is a trickster proposal and not good for Sacramento County.
Yeah, I've seen this in my own neighborhood where they've got these 40-year proposals. I live near this the Aggie Square, the new Aggie Square development, and they've set this whole thing up, this 40 years development zone. I forget exactly what they called it, so that they put in there. Yeah. And so now that Aggie Square development pays their own taxes on the zone, but they get to use their own taxes. So it's like you're taking money from your left pocket and putting it in their right pocket.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It's this really goofy thing, but it's kind of the same thing. They're setting it up as such a long commitment that you're stuck with it. Right? Oh yeah, 40 years. We're all stuck with it.
And one of the problems we have right now is Sacramento and California are already plagued by excessive taxation. We have the highest sales tax rates in the nation. People are fleeing the state, going to other places, and this type of tax really hurts the disadvantaged and the middle class the most. And now we're in massive inflation, the worst in 40 years. Who knows how that may occur. We're coming off the heels of a pandemic. You still have many small businesses who have not reopened, many that have not reopened, who are struggling to survive. And it was recently reported that as many as 1/3 of all SMUD customers are either behind or have stopped paying their SMUD bills at all. And then, it doubles the countywide transportation tax. And again, it is regressive, which I think I mentioned already, why you had previously working with SAC Tax when we led the coalition, National Action Network, NAACP, saying, no, this is not good. And this is why we've bannered the campaign, Measure A, not okay. But that's one of the first and most obvious reasons for being quite concerned about the tax.
Yeah. So what are some of the more less obvious reasons?
Okay.
I think we all, for those of us like me, hey, it's a 0.5-cent sales tax. I'm against it just on principle, right? We already pay an insanely amount of tax. So exactly. I don't even have to dig to the details. No, they have more money than they need, right? They're spending it on their friends of. I call it the various industrial complexes. It works just like Eisenhower's military industrial complex, whether it's the homeless industrial complex or the educational industrial complex, or name your government program. It's like we have more than enough money. They just spend it terribly. And
there's huge government waste in general, and government is not incentivized to be effective and efficient with its dollars, and so a lot of systemic issues there. But at the same time, frankly, James, for a lot of governmental leaders, when they see a budget and it's 80 million or 80 billion, it's just big numbers on a piece of paper. They have no particular reelection. How does this impact my citizens? How does this impact my economy? And so they're thinking in isolation, and they're just sort of going along with the process. But the second mega reason, that's sort of how sort of a trickster thing, is this whole thing is labeled as a, quote, citizens initiative, right? But it's furthest from the fact is that, you really have an initiative that's been ramrodded by developers and construction companies and labor in that regard. So, back in 1996, when you had Proposition 218 passed, it confirmed that special taxes needed a 2/3 vote by the citizens. Okay, now there's a little bit of a backstory of how this whole thing began, but the backstory simply is this. There were some proposals in San Francisco and Oakland and Fresno. In one particular proposal in San Francisco, it did not pass. It did not make the 2/3 threshold, and it was appealed, and the Supreme Court opined in 2017, the California Supreme Court, that they might be open to listening to rather than a government initiative, which the most measures come from, the local government sponsors it. If it was a citizen initiative, maybe they might exercise a little more grace and about this 2/3 requirement. So that's what happened, and that's how the whole thing developed. And there was a race on at that time. And so, interesting enough, there were a couple of proposals in San Francisco. One had to do with dealing with the homeless and taxing commercial buildings and various things like that. One had to do with child care, I think. And the early education thing passed by 50.87%, just passed that majority threshold. And then that was appealed, and the Supreme Court said, no, we're not going to hear it, because the appellate court said, well, okay, a citizens initiative, 50%, that's all right. So the Supreme Court said they would not hear it. But interesting enough, James, the same type of matter which occurred in Fresno and which occurred in Oakland, where they had a majority citizens initiative pass, the court struck it down, saying, no, the 2/3 requirement is a legitimate requirement and it needs to be maintained. But that was the loophole that was open for developers. Now, back to Measure A here, what you have is the Committee for, quote, a Better Sacramento proposed this whole measure, and they had to go out and get citizens, quote, to sign the ballot. And if you look at that committee, which is basically a labor and construction organization that's run by Clinton Myers, a builder and road repair company, Joseph Cruz, and these are all nice people. He's the exec director of the California State Council of Laborers and a lobbyist. And thirdly, Mike Quigley, who's the executive director of the California Alliance for Jobs, representing about 2,000 heavy construction companies. And the top funders of this whole thing are Angelo Sakopoulos, again, a nice guy, Mike Quigley's organization, and Cordova Hills Development, which has been pushing for the connector between 50 and 99 for some time. But what they did was, and this is where I take onus at the concept that this is a citizens initiative. Well, one, the sponsors are not representative of the citizens. Secondly, they spent $1.7 million to qualify the measure. They spent on average $21.25 per signature. So this is a bought and paid for proposal by developers and contractors. It's not a citizens initiative, not at all. And we don't want to be fooled by that. And anyone who wants access to the public record is going to go look up those facts. So that's my next mega point. It's not a citizens initiative. It is clearly a commercial, and I'm not against commercial development. I'm not against these types of things. But they're going through a judicial loophole, trying to sneak one by at a majority vote rather than a 2/3 vote.
Yeah, it'd be one thing if you were honest about it, right? Say, hey, we want to do this. Let's go through the process. Let's follow the proper process, and then we can actually have a discussion on whether the terms of the proposals are valid, good, long-term discussion. But if you're gonna try to approach these themes from a, shall we say, a manipulative way, we'll use the word
Yeah, that's fair.
manipulative way, then you have to be overly skeptical about what they're actually trying to accomplish,
Well,
right?
yeah, and I think we're going to see as we continue the discussion what they are trying to accomplish. And one of the wonderful things about having your own citizens initiative, if you can afford 1.7, 1.8 million dollars, I mean, I could put, or you could put anything in the ballot. And the marvelous thing about that, don't have to have any public hearings, no public debate, no citizen input, no, is this reasonable or not reasonable? I just, I can, anything I can dream of, I can put on the ballot. So the third mega point, James, and here's where you really get to the crux of the matter in terms of why are the developers doing this. At its core, Measure A is a land use proposal. It's not a transportation initiative. The proposal overrides decades of planning, as I mentioned, by the Sacramento Area Council of Government, SACOG, that includes Sacramento and 5 other counties, with a laundry list of all these special things they want to do. And the list of transportation projects, pretty much just window dressing, because they don't care about, rapid transit. They don't care about this. They don't care about that. They simply want to open up a whole new swath of land for mega development. And so, as I said, Measure A has these 26 new capacity building projects that are not included in the 2020 SACOG Metro Transportation and Sustainable Community Strategy. And that's why you have like Mike McKeeper and others, a retired exec of SACOG, really just up in arms about this whole thing. So this is going to change the basic locations of new housing and employment throughout the region. And rather than doing infill and things of this nature, it's going to be the typical sprawl that we've had for decades, the same sprawl you've seen in Los Angeles and in much of San Francisco and things of this nature, which will change the land use forecast and travel patterns and increase per capita vehicle miles traveled. Now, one of the interesting things about doing all this, and again, this proposal, anybody can, with 1.8 million, can come up, put something on the ballot, no analysis. This proposal is going to cause us to miss our mandated 2035 greenhouse gas reduction goals, which leads to the next objection, which is indeed that Measure A aggravates climate change. It doesn't prevent climate change, again, as the proponents would argue. And by missing our 2035 climate goal requirements, we are going to be losing billions of dollars in transportation and local housing that comes from the feds and the state. And along with this, the American Lung Association has consistently ranked Sacramento in the top 10 most polluted cities, primarily due to our air quality. So those are some of the reasons. I really want that connector built so I can open up ag land now and build on there, et cetera, because I have a ways to get to there. And that means the average commute by an individual who's traveling to work is going to be longer, et cetera, et cetera. But that's, and I will point out, the proponents did no analysis on this at all. And actually, SACOG back in April and May did a revised analysis saying, what's the impact of Measure A? And they had 3 or 4 universities, UC staff and others working on this. And the staff report came back and clearly said, this is not hocus pocus. We are going to miss our greenhouse gas emission goals. This is the analytical impact of it. So it's not, she said, he said type thing. I mean, there's And that's caused great alarm in Sacramento local government at that time, which leads into some of the next major problems with the initiative.
Yeah, well, you're talking to, for me, when you get to this, meeting these mandated goals from the state, you're talking for, you're going, the whole thing is frustrating for me because you've got these imposed goals essentially by writ, right? You got the governor just decided, hey, we're going to create these goals that now we have to live by. And so I'm trying not to just separate the two issues in my own personal head because
I
because a
understand.
lot what people call sprawl, I see as that's the way people want to live. And so it's the opportunity, it's the job of government to respond to the government and builders and whatnot to respond to the way people want to live. And if people want sprawl, well, it's our job as politicians and to give them sprawl. And it's clearly what they've wanted. And the over planning, the government over planning has caused our, shall we say, housing market issues in California, right? There's those two things are related. And so how all that balances out. So I don't want any misconstrue anything. I am way against Measure A. So that's it's just some of these arguments from me personally, they're frustrating. From the libertarian perspective, they're frustrating. I get them, but
I well agree. And this is why you have such a wide variety of arguments sort of coalescing this very unique coalition. And you have these greenhouse gas emission goals by the California Air Resources Board, CARB, and and they're the ones that are now looking at, well, maybe we should not have gasoline vehicles, we ought all electric and all that type of stuff. And so it's very easy for government to overstep its role.
Yeah, well, I'm all for hydrogen, the new hydrogen vehicles. I want us to go the hydrogen way. It seems to me that we've now got it figured out, and so we're going batteries is dumb. But that's a whole different discussion.
Another TV show.
Yeah, that's a whole different discussion. So you say you've got 5. So I think you've got one more point, and we've got 5 minutes. So.
Oh, okay. Well, great. We're doing good on time then. The fifth reason is that Measure A is flawed in its very design. When the developers in their rush, hey, let's get this on the ballot, man. We're gonna not just have one project, we're gonna get 26 of these things on here, and then when SACOG did the analysis and they came back and said, hey, there's problems in River City here. That created quite a stir. Oh no, what are we going to do now? Now, frankly, under reasonable public policy, you might say, well, hey, let's pull this proposal back. Let's rework it. Let's recraft it, etc. But at the same time, they're going, son of a gun, I've already spent $1.8 million getting all these signatures, and they're looking at, nothing wrong with profit, but they're looking at the profit motive rather than the tax issues and all these other things. And they're basically looking for taxpayers to fund them, and to make life easier for them in that regard. So in this process of failing to correct and refile the initiative, they said, oh, God, my gosh, what are we going to do? We have this surgical problem. We have a stab in the chest here of major proportions. And they pulled out a Band-Aid solution to cover this stab in the chest. And again, this is all smoke and mirrors. They come up and they say, well, we're going to have this memorandum of understanding, that we're all going to be good now, right? You hear? And we're all going to, keep to our promises. And actually, there are no promises. And so this, and you'll see even in the ballot argument, they make reference to this formal agreement, this MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Now, here are the main points here. One, a memorandum of standing has little weight legally. The 3 parties that were supposed to sign, only 2 signed. So you have the Transportation Authority, you have SACOG, and the JPA connector, Joint Power Authority connector between 5 and not 5, but Highway 99 and Highway 50. They refused to sign, which means they're not, even morally compelled to comply with the MOU. And memorandums of understanding, they come and they go. And in this particular memorandum, it's clear it's amendable. It can be amendable the day after the vote. There's nothing in there that says this has the weight of law. So what you do have is memorandums of understanding have no weight of law, but the actual initiative itself has the clear weight of law. So that's why I refer to that as a Band-Aid on a surgical stab in the heart type of problem. So Measure A at its worst is ballot box land use. You've heard of ballot box budgeting, which is sort of goofy at times and screwed up. But this is ballot box land use at its worst. And the developers are getting taxpayers to pay for their problems, in essence.
Yeah, and that's a growing problem, right? Nobody, left or right or libertarians, really like taxpayers funding businesses, but yet it happens all the time. It's just so strange.
Well, and that's inappropriate, and the reason SAC tax exists is that why SAC tax, the abbreviation Sacramento Taxpayers Association, our whole purpose is to give taxpayers the opportunity to exercise ownership over their own government, and we're a nonpartisan organization, and we believe in the right to limited taxation, the right to vote on tax increases, the right that there should be economical, equitable, and efficient use of tax dollars, which is a real problem, and that there should be high levels of transparency in our government, and that is our purpose. And for several reasons, this was an easy measure for a SAC tax to review and say, wow, this fails on several points.
Yeah, I know it was easy for us. I can speak for the Libertarian Party on this one. It was easy for us to oppose too. It wasn't even a question. Yes, that, no. Just, some of us, it's a tax increase. No, we don't have to read any farther than that, right? And some of us are more interested in processes, and so it's, no. It was an easy no. This one we cannot support, and easy oppose. It was an easy oppose. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And so we've got 30 seconds. People can find you at
www.measureanotokay.org, and
if they wanted to learn about the Sacramento Taxpayers Association, they can go to. I didn't put the screen, but I'll put it on the description later.
www.sacramentotaxpayers.com.
Thank you for coming, Bruce. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll get you back on here a few times. Maybe in the studio. We'll get you in the studio. We'll get you to sit down and talk some future Sacramento issues.
That'd be fun. And that my canary will not be chirping in the background.
The studio is a fun experience, and you can watch us on public access channel 17, 8 o'clock Thursdays. And from that, we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching us. And from all of us here at Libertarian Counterpoint, please remember to love everybody.
Amen.